Welcome to the Fantasy Draft Weekly Rundown. Joining me, as always, is co-host and NFL Ironman London Fletcher. London, this defense for the Vikings looks unbelievable to me. So I got to ask you, how does this unit compare to the Legion of Booms over the years past, and are we looking at an all-time great defensive unit?
I would say they compare favorably. You look at the front for each team's. Great secondaries as well. They really they probably blitz more than the Legion of Boom did. Their linebackers, I would say, maybe blitz better than the Legion of Boom, but very favorable matchups. I really love the secondary of this Vikings defense. You look at a guy like Terrence Newman, man. He's 38 years old and continuing to play at a high level. We know about the other corners, Xavier Rhodes, he's playing phenomenal. And Trey Waynes, who was a first-round draft pick for them a season ago, he's not even in the starting lineup because Terrence Newman is playing so well. So to have him as your third corner really shows the type of depth that they have. Harrison Smith, one of the outstanding young safeties in the league, and Everson Griffin is a disruptive pass rusher. It's a lot to like about this Vikings defense. Even last year, they played well, and this year they've taken it to another level.
There you go. And for our new viewers, the Legion of Boom, of course, that Seahawks defense of the last few years that was so powerful, just so we're all on the same page. But let's move on to the next question. I'm curious of your thoughts here. Sammy Coates caught 6 of 11 passes this week for 139 yards and 2 touchdowns. I just wrote the weekly review, and I wasn't sure what to make of him because officially he dropped 3 passes, including 2 that would have been touchdowns. Do you think back in your day, coaches would have praised him or scolded him after a performance like that, especially because some people have said he dropped as many as 5 passes? And what do you make of him moving forward?
It would be both, where the coaches would definitely be happy with what he did in terms of production, catching the balls that he caught, and the 2 touchdowns. But the drops have to be a concern as well because you see the speed, you see the ability that Coates has, but you can't gloss over the fact that he dropped 3 passes. So you have to address that and stay on him. I know he's probably frustrated with himself as well. The good players, they tend to be harder on themselves. And Coates, I look at as a young, ascending player. Ben seems to have confidence in him. And you look at, there's going to be obviously a tremendous amount of attention paid to Antonio Brown. So who is that next guy, that go-to guy opposite Antonio Brown? And right now it appears to be Coates. So moving forward, I would think you can continue to count on him to produce in ball games.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he's going to morph into that Martavis Bryant role and hold on to it. So he's someone I'm paying a close eye to moving forward. He's a guy I definitely want to have some exposure to each week because he's that deep threat for Big Ben. And we know Big Ben is willing to go deep, so that is definitely enticing. All right, London, let's get to the picks this week. Here are mine. Let me start with quarterback. How about Tyrod Taylor? 10,500. I'm going cheap this week. I've been expensive the last few weeks, but I've decided this week I'm paying up elsewhere. San Francisco ranks 30th in time of possession, which is nothing new for Chip Kelly. So the Bills are going to have the ball a lot. In fact, Chip Kelly was last year, so I'm expecting the San Francisco to fall even further. And so far, Taylor's floor has been 15.8 fantasy points because he's run for at least 25 yards in each game. All he needs is a touchdown or 2, for value or even crush value at this price. And the 49ers have already allowed 10 passing touchdowns. I know this Bills receiving corps isn't great, but I'm hoping at least we can get 1 receiving touchdown and he can make price at this or even run for 1. There's just a lot of different ways Taylor can make it work. So, London, who do you like this week at quarterback?
I'm going to spend up at the quarterback position. I'm going to pick a guy who actually is one of our guys on FantasyDraft.com, and that's Drew Brees. I like him against this Panthers defense. I especially like him at home against the Panthers defense. You look at what Brees has done at home. You're talking about 7 TDs, only 1 interception in 2 home games. and he averages 32.68 points per game at home, which is insane. And you look at Drew Brees, definitely adding the fact that this Panthers secondary and this Panthers defense overall has really struggled to get pressure on the quarterback and defend the pass. Matt Ryan threw for over 500 yards. Jameis Winston had a big game against them in that game-winning drive to seal the victory on Monday Night Football. I like Drew Brees at home, and then look at the struggles of the Panthers defense.
There you go, London. A true company man picking Drew Brees. So there you go. Let's move on to running back. This is where I'm spending up. I'm going to spend up a little at receiver too, but Le'Veon Bell's the guy I want. There's just so much safety here. I mean, you look at last week, 11 targets for a running back, 9 receptions. He played 63 of 76 snaps. Now we are hearing, just came across Twitter, that D'Angelo Williams is hurt. And you look at his numbers. Since 2014, he's averaged 23.6 fantasy points on the road compared to 20.86 at home. You and I last week talked about Ben Roethlisberger's splits on home and road. So if Ben Roethlisberger isn't getting it done as well on the road, obviously they got to make up for it. Le'Veon Bell's the guy. I'm not scared of the Dolphins. I think this is a perfect spot. Who you got in London?
You know, I'm gonna go with a guy in LaShawn McCoy at the running back position. You see him going against the San Francisco 49ers, who are 31st in the league versus the run. So that right there in itself is a great matchup. But then when you look at, since the Bills made a change at the offensive coordinator position, over the last 3 games, LaShawn McCoy has averaged 110 yards rushing per game. He has 3 TDs total. When you throw in the fact that he also has 11 receptions over those three games, I love LaShawn McCoy in this matchup against the San Francisco 49ers at home. No NaVorro Bowman for the San Francisco 49ers. You have to love LaShawn McCoy in this matchup.
Glad to hear we're on the same page. We got the 2 ball carriers for the Bills, so load up on your Bills this week. Let's move on to the wide receiver position. I got a few guys, but there's one that stands out to me. Larry Fitzgerald, 14,500 on FantasyDraft. The Jets have been burned this year by pretty much everyone, but especially the number 2 and 3 receivers per Football Outsiders. They keep track of that sort of stuff. And I know you're going to say, but Larry Fitzgerald is their number 1 target. But he lines up in the slot 71% of the time. So I doubt they're going to have anyone shadowing him. Even if they have Revis shadowing him, we're not scared at this point. He has been horrendous. So with Carson Palmer back, expect double-digit targets of him to get back to his big numbers. You know, quite the upgrade from Stanton. And then I like Jarvis Landry, who's just really safe. He is coming off a bad outing where he was only targeted 3 times. But each of his games before that, at least 10 targets, at least 7 receptions, caught 120-plus passes. So if he has a bad game, it's likely not to result in another one following it. They're going to be playing from behind against Pittsburgh, according to Vegas. But I actually think the Dolphins are a sneaky cover this week because Pittsburgh doesn't play as well on the road. So I think Landry's going to be involved no matter what. Those are the guys I like. London, who do you like at wide receiver?
You know, I'm going to touch on your Larry Fitzgerald play. I'm not so convinced that Darrelle Revis won't be able to cover Larry Fitzgerald. Revis, as you look at him right now, he struggles a little bit more with guys who has that deep type of speed down the field. Fitz is not that type of guy. He's a big target. Not a possession receiver, but he's more of an intermediate type of receiver for the Arizona Cardinals. I think that matchup bodes well for Darrelle Revis, and I wouldn't be surprised if they actually have him follow Larry Fitzgerald in that game. I'm going to go with a guy playing on the opposite side of the field at the wide receiver position, Brandon Marshall, in that ball game. 27 targets in the last 2 games for Brandon Marshall. That's right, I said 27 targets. That's an insane amount of targets that he's had for the Jets. He's had a TD in each of those ball games. I love him for this Jets. And Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's not going to throw the football to Brandon Marshall, regardless of who's covering him, whether it's Patrick Peterson or whoever the case may be. They're going to throw the football at at Brandon Marshall, and he makes plays for the Jets. So I like him. Another guy who I love playing. I mentioned I would start Drew Brees. Willie Snead for the New Orleans Saints is another good play going against this Carolina Panthers secondary who struggles. They've struggled against big receivers. You saw Mike Evans have a big game against them on Monday Night Football. Julio Jones had a big game against them. Willie Snead, I say, was going to have a big game against the Panthers as well.
I was looking for a tweet while you were talking about Revis that I think he's allowed 80% completion so far this year. And the rule that I've kind of learned from some people with
hey. Well, who are you talking to? Me or the you gonna respect my opinion or somebody else on Twitterverse?
I'm just telling you.
I don't care if he allowed 80% completion. He's coming off a week he didn't play. The Jets are a desperate team. Again, I look at the matchup. The matchup tells me Fitzgerald is not a blazer. Revis, obviously, he doesn't have top-end speed anymore either. When you see the struggles that Revis has had, it's been against with those quick, shifty guys and also guys who have deep burner-type speed. So I'm looking at that matchup. I like Revis in this matchup. That's all. That's all you need to say. Take it to the bank. That's all I need to say.
There you go. I like Fitzgerald for his height. We'll see how that one plays out. That's going to be a close one to monitor since we apparently are on opposite sides this weekend, so stay tuned. Let's move on to tight end because I'm going to a guy who I'm sold on now, who I wasn't at the beginning of the year, which is Jimmy Graham. I read a lot about that patellar tendon surgery and how that's much harder to come back from ACL. There's many guys who are never the same as guys who were, but back-to-back 100-yard games. Now a matchup against Atlanta has allowed the third most fantasy points to the position. I like the spot for Russell Wilson. I think it's time to stop denying that this guy might not be healthy. He looks at least similar to what he was. He's showing you with production. All it took was those 2 games for me. I'm back on the Jimmy Graham bandwagon. Who do you like, London?
I'm going to spend down at the tight end position because I spent up at quarterback and spent up a little bit at running back as well. I'm going to go with Jesse James for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Guy's only going to cost you $5,900 on FantasyDraft. And you look at him, 3 out of the last 4 games, he's had touchdown passes, had 8 targets against the Jets last week. I like him, especially in the red zone. He has a tremendous knack and feel for getting open in the red zone and catching touchdowns. So if you're going to spend up in different positions, whether it be quarterback, running back, or even wide receiver, you can spend down and get a guy like a Jesse James who has had a touchdown in 3 out of the last 4 ball games.
There you go. I like that pick. And I'm going to stick with the Steelers theme, going to defense. I like the defense. It's more that I don't like Ryan Tannehill, who's one of the least aware quarterbacks in the pocket that I've seen, man. So some of the last few weeks.
His offensive line, to Ryan's defense, his offensive line has been a mess. Between injuries and just not being able to block, we don't really know what he is. So he's going to take a lot of hits. So I can understand your thinking with the Pittsburgh Steelers defense.
Yeah, just the numbers: sacked 17 times, thrown 7 interceptions. So that's the reason I'm willing to pay up for these Steelers. Who do you like at defense?
I'm gonna kind of go middle of the road defensively and go with the Detroit Lions against the LA Rams. You look at the Rams and their offense in general, 32nd ranked offense in yards, 32nd ranked offense in points per game. The game is in Detroit. Although Detroit's defense has not been outstanding, they did play pretty good to come away with that victory and hand Philadelphia its first loss on the season. I like them at home against the Rams, a team that really struggles to create points and also get yards. So that's a good play for me. Case Keenum is not a great quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. That would be a solid play for me.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you against the Rams offense, that is for sure. Let's get to the questions. There were a lot this week. Only about 10 of them were PG or better. Let's put it that way. So let's go with the questions that we got that work. I think we've talked about space on this program before, but now they want to get into the specifics. There's talk of a trip to Mars being available by 2030, so people want to know, London, do you plan to go to Mars in 2030, and how about outer space in general? This one from Josh Kalachi.
No, don't plan to go to Mars in 2030, nor do I plan to go to outer space. That 30,000 feet of in the airplane, 32,000 feet in the airplane is fine for me. That's about as high as I want to go. I don't want to go and see space. I'm not interested to see what's out there.
There you go. That is not on London's bucket list to go outside the atmosphere, so we can scratch that question for future. All right, London. Steve Repsold wants to know, what was the toughest injury you ever played through?
Toughest injury, I would probably say I had a little small fracture in my foot back in, I want to say 2008, and I did it out in Seattle against the Seahawks, and on the day after or the days preceding that, my foot was just swollen like an elephant's foot, so to speak, and I was really not sure I'd be able to play the next week. Walked into the stadium in a boot. We played the Giants on that Sunday, and I really was not sure I was going to be able to play. Got a pain-killing injection in my foot, and literally I couldn't really feel my foot the whole game, but I was able to go out and have a really good game. I know I think I had over 15 tackles. I'm not sure what the exact number was, but I remember having a really good game. And I dealt with that injury. That happened maybe about the 8th or 9th game of the season. So I dealt with that injury for the rest of the season, and it never really got better. It just got more manageable, I would say.
Jeez, there you have it. London Fletcher, a fighter. Meanwhile, I won't go outside when it's raining. So there is quite the contrast between your two hosts here. I ain't playing through no injuries, but until next time, I'm Ricky Sanders with London Fletcher, and we're out.